Okay, so I'm going back to my original scripting style, just the editing will be different, and possibly the writing. Anywho, I don't really have much to say for my introduction for Ratchet Deadlocked. I mean, I have never even heard of this game, and came across it randomly when at a used game store. My thought was, well, I really enjoyed the first 3 Ratchet and Clank games, so this one might be fun, even if the box art seems to make it look quite different from the other games. Who knows, I might like it. And here we are today. So, yeah, Ratchet Deadlock. Let's take a look at this. To start things off, we meet up with Ratchet and Clank aboard the Phoenix, which they are now captains of. Sasha warns them that, hey, heroes have been disappearing, and then, coincidentally, after being told this, evil robots aboard the Phoenix and abduct Ratchet, Clank, and Al. Ratchet wakes up to find himself in some kind of armor. As it turns out, he is in the Dread Zone, a game show in which contestants have to compete against each other in these deadly challenges. If he doesn't, then this collar around his neck will explode off his head. So yeah, if you've ever seen another game or movie with this kind of setup, then you already know how the story pans out, cause it really doesn't drift that far from the formula. That's not to say it's bad. After all, Ratchet is still a likable lead that I can root for. His 2 robot buddies I actually found entertaining, and this time there is a lot more satirical comedy that I enjoyed, especially these Vox advertisements. The only problem was that I didn't give a shit about the story, and that's mostly because these types of Battlezone stories don't interest me. On top of that, they try to go for a more darker tone, but I didn't find the execution to be well done, which might have something to do with just how over the top the comedic moments were, which made it difficult for me to take anything the game did seriously when it wanted me to. It's not a bad story, and some of you might enjoy it, and that's great, but I found it to be mostly boring and forgettable. Now, before we get too far into the gameplay, let's get something out of the way first. I hate the control scheme the game begins with, so for sanity's sake, I changed it to third-person controls since I prefer those more. Anyway, we don't get Clank in this game, so Ratchet now no longer has his high and long jump, but aside from that, Ratchet still feels and controls the same, which is good. So like, what's different this time around? Well, first off, progression works a bit differently now. Instead of going to different planets to explore and acquire new items, you go to planets and complete a set of challenges before moving on. These missions will range from get to this location, take out these enemies, take out these pillars, or plant bombs here. You know, that kind of stuff. Basically, think of these like the mission segments from the 3rd game, so yeah. For some stupid reason, there are these separate challenges that you still need to do in order to continue on in the game. Like, sure, they don't have anything to do with each planet's main objective, but you still have to do them, so in some of these missions, you'll get to ride vehicles, and oh boy do these range in quality. The Landwalker thing is pretty alright and has some decent missions, as does the spaceship thing. But that hoverbike, that fucking hoverbike. Okay, I hate racing-like sections in most games when they aren't racing games, but this hoverbike makes things so much more worse. It's controlled mostly with both joysticks, one for steering and the other for speed, and this I find to be so uncomfortable, as it's really awkward to use this damn bike. I hate its missions more than anything, and thank God they don't show up hardly at all. So you kinda have this hub area where you can use a weapon vendor, choose your next location, and customize your robot buddies. These robots, by the way, they follow you around and are good at killing enemies. Not only that, but they can take over bases, hack these orbs, get rid of enemy shields, and most of all, they can create these grind rails to help Ratchet reach far off locations. I love these guys. They are pretty helpful, and there isn't too much of a penalty for if they die. Or at least there isn't in normal mode. I really can't say for the higher difficulties. And yeah, you can now choose your game's difficulty upon starting up a file. Speaking of rail grinding, there's a planet in this game that has a few mega rail grinding moments to make up for them not being in Ratchet and Clank 3. And to be honest, they are pretty damn cool and fun. A part of that has to do with the fact that you can now use your dual pistol-like weapons while grinding, which is neat. I should say there isn't much platforming in this game. They mostly only show up during these tournament levels, which I actually kinda enjoy. Weapons, of course, will upgrade as you use them, though now they can go up to level 10, cause why not? To add some variety to the weapons, you can now buy mods to give your weapons more ammo, increase the weapon's speed, and even make it to where they gain more experience upon each kill. These are cool, but my favorite mods are the Omega mods that give your weapons new effects, like poisoning, freezing the enemies, morphine, and napalm. Basically, these change up how your weapons work, and it's super fun to use and experiment with. And you know what? That's about it. Sure, there's some extra things like the skill points, but I don't care much for these in this game. I mean, I guess there are boss fights and they're not too bad, but nothing all that special either. The only thing that I think is worth any more attention is that you can play this game in co-op mode, and holy crap, it's actually a lot of fun. I played this game for like 3 hours one time with a cousin, and it's the most fun I've had with this title. So if anything, I appreciate Ratchet Deadlocked for that. So the art style this time around is quite different from the previous games. It's a bit more shaded, kind of making things look a little darker, and I'm okay with this. Sure, there isn't anything I would consider to be visually awesome or outstanding, but the art direction works for what the game's going for. I mean, hey, we still get some cool locations to visit, like a sickly green planet where you get attacked by, well, for a lack of a better term here, zombie robots, the city where it's constantly raining, a broken up space station, and my favorite, a barren snow planet with old abandoned temples. Again, I think the art style complements locations like these. While everyone does do a good job at voicing their characters, I do want to give a special credit to Phil Morris and Travis Davis as Ratchet's robot buddies. They are my favorite new characters in the game, and I think they did a great job at giving them so much personality and charm. Then we have the music, which is pretty good actually. I can't remember the themes too often, and it all ends up becoming background noise when playing the game. But listening to the soundtrack on its own, yeah, there's some good stuff here. It's mostly good for dark space atmosphere with a slight rock edge to it. Ultimately, I find this game to be okay. I'm not that huge of a fan since the story doesn't interest me. The gameplay can get really repetitive, and I hate that goddamn hoverbike. It's fun to play with a friend, and there are some weapons and ideas that I do like, but overall, I just find the game kind of forgettable. It is, however, much better than Size Matters and Secret Agent Clank. I know they started off as PSP games and weren't developed by Insomniac, but I still hated playing them. So I would rather not do videos on them, since I prefer spending time on games I find interesting or games that I like, and Ratchet Deadlock I at least find interesting. Well, that concludes the Ratchet and Clank series on the PlayStation 2, and overall, I really like the main 3 games. If I had to choose a favorite, it would easily be Going Commando, as I think it has the best story, balances the gunplay and platforming the best, and gives you so much extra stuff to do in the galaxy. This also concludes me taking a look at the 3 main platforming Sony mascot series for the PlayStation 2. If you couldn't already tell, Ratchet and Clank is my favorite of the 3. Next would be Jak and Daxter, as I love the first game and I like the third. And last would be the Sly series, as I love the first game there too, but don't care much for its sequels. Before I end this video, I would like to say that from here on out, I will be putting out reviews about once every 3 weeks, as that works better for me these days. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time, where I'll be taking a brief look at a PlayStation 1 game before starting up my next PlayStation 2 marathon. See you all then.
You